Now today we discussed the historical developments of performance management, and we know very well the performance evaluation is key, and it has a great history. And in history of development of performance management system, it starts with the first phase. In first phase, the origin of performance can be traced in the early 1960s when the performance appraisal systems were in practice. Where here, the performance appraisal system was mostly maintained and controlled by the managers or supervisors of the company or an organization. During this period, annual confidential reports, which was also known as employee service record, is simply termed as employee service record, were maintained for controlling the behaviors of employees, and these reports provided substantial information on the performance of the employees. If you take any of remarks in the ESR or ACR, used to adversely affect the prospect of career growth of an employee. The assessment were usually done for 10 traits on a 5 or a 10-point rating scale basis. These traits were job knowledge, security, dynamism, punctuality, leadership, loyalty, etc. The remarks of these reports were never communicated to the employees in your organization, and strictly maintain it as a confidential, and maintain in the entire process of the organization. The employees used to remain in absolute darkness due to absence of transparent mechanism of feedback and communication. This system has suffered from many drawbacks because all the reports which are prepared and submitted by the manager are highly, and the majority of the people, they may go for the bias and they may favor to their very close group or close peers, or some we have a blood relationship with any other person who are not actually given a good performance, but we give it as a good ranking or a good point of scale, so that it may take some bias or it may miss the transparency in promotional criteria, right? That is one of the drawback of the first phase. And in second phase, it starts from 1960s, and especially the late 1960s till early 1970s. And the key hallmark of this phase was that whatever adverse remark were incorporated in the performance reports were communicated to their employees, so that every employee could take corrective actions for overcoming such kind of deficiencies. In this process of appraising the performance, the reviewing officer used to enjoy discretionary power of overruling the ratings given by the reporting officer. The employees usually used to get a formal written communication on their identified or the working areas, and for they use it for the improvements. And if the ratings are of any specific trait, usually to be below 33%. It means if their performance level or else the rating is only 3 point or 3.5 scale, so it is not acceptable, because they have to gain above the 4 is a minimum work they perform, and they have achieved a minimum standard which is given by the organization. So if they are unable to use, or if they are unable to develop the traits or the job commitment towards the work, and if they get only 33% of marks from their superior or super manager, so they may be treated as not performing well. If it is above, they're treated as good. If the percentage is increased, it means that they are very good at their job. So in this phase, they're only focusing on the job and the output, and then how they are getting uh, these performance reports. So this performance report is good and it is above 40% or 50%, it may be treated as a good employee. But here we have also some drawbacks, because 33% is not enough. But every organization at that time in 1970s, they work uh, they work continually for 12 hours or 11 hours, so that the employer also they treat them as a, so we can get at least of 33%, so that we can give a minimum wage. So that is the kind and the nature of the employer. At the same time, the employees also treat like this. So this phase is ends in early 1970s, and then we enter into the third phase, that is in terms we introduced ACR was replaced by the performance appraisal. So we introduced the performance appraisal system, and one of the key changes in this is this stage was that the employees were permitted to describe their accomplishments in the confidential performance reports, so that they can trust the manager or supervisor, and then they trust the organization. And here the employees were allowed to describe their accomplishment in the self-appraisal form, so that they will be benefited, that they can show the real work to the management, and it may be conducted, or they can submit at the end of the year. Besides inclusion of these traits in the rating scale, several new components were considered by the many organizations, which could measure the productivity and performance of an employee in quantifying terms such as targets they achieved, or the output they given to the organization, the work progress. So we have considered all these things, and some certain organizations also introduce a new section on training needs in the appraisal form. So whenever the training is required, the employees, they may mention in appraisal form, so that the company look after it, and then they may provide the training programs. So this confidentiality element was still being maintained, and the entire process continued to be control oriented instead of being development oriented. So here, not only giving a training program, so the organizations measure our organizational effectiveness, which is linked with the development orientation of an employee. Because training is one part, and then application of that particular training is another part. If you apply properly at your job work, so that you may have a development chance. And also we have a development programs which were conducted to your employees, or else by your company, they give a development program that will be beneficial for the employee as well as the employer and the whole industry. That is the reason they introduced this particular performance appraisal, which is linked with the training and development. And after these particular programs, they enter into the fourth phase, which is started in mid 1970s, and its origin was India, as a great business tycoons like L&T, Larsen and Toubro, followed by State Bank of India and other, introduced appreciable reforms in the field. So we know very well L&T is one of the best players in the industries, and the majority of the training program which yields good results for the L&T company. They have started good initiations in organization, especially in performance management, and they have a good compensation package, and every time they have to identify the needs of the company employees, and they arrange everything. So that is the reason they collaborated with the State Bank of India to get some reforms in their field. In this phase, the appraisal process was the more development driven, and the most probably are they mainly focusing on target based. So when the target they reach, it means that they're participative and open instead of being treated as the confidential process. The system focused on performance planning, the review and development of an employee by following methodological approaches. So in this entire process, the appraisee, means the employee, and the reporting officer mutually decided upon the key result areas in the beginning of a year, and reviewed it after every 6 months, so that within a 6 month they can identify a good key areas, and then what is the performance at that particular areas, and then if there is any pitfalls or else if there is any problems, so that they can do it as for the best for the organization. So it is a very important aspect in the fourth phase. And in the review period, we have different types of issues such as factors affecting the performance, the individual's personalities, or life balance, finding needs of an other employees, or your newer targets, and environmental change, and also the rating were discussed within the appraisal in a collaborative environment, makes this phase more powerful. And this phase was a welcoming change in the area of performance management especially, and many of the organizations need to introduce this performance appraisal in the HR department for taking care of development issues of the organization. So it was very important aspect that changes the entire organizational perspective towards the organization and then employee. So the organization required to give targets and then give rewards to your employees, and based and which is based on the performance appraisal. And the another thing is the fifth phase. This phase was characterized the maturity in approach of handling people's issues. It means that we are giving more priority for HR related issues, especially maintaining a good relation between the employer and employee relation. It was more performance driven, and emphasis was in development, planning, and improvement. So every time we have to develop new action plans, and then you have to plan how to reach or how to reach your destination, and then what are the improvement programs required within executing that plan to get the best output from your employees as a whole organization. So utmost important was given to the culture building, the team appraisal, and the quality circles were established for assessing the improvement in the overall employee productivity. The performance management system is still evolving, and in the near future one may expect far more objectives and a transparent system, so that every employee they may get benefited with the training and development programs. And if the people's handling or the maintaining good relationship with your employee, they may cause a good results of your employee, so that the performance of employee has increased, and the overall organizational performance will increase. So it means that every phase it has a unique characterization, and it has a new initiative that changes the level of performance from one particular phase to another phase. And then especially the performance system has evolved, and it may change the organization's perspective, especially the management's perspectives towards the employees in the organization. That was a major thing we identified in these phases. This is the historical development of performance appraisal, and we enter into what are the components of performance management. So this is the components, and we can so now we discuss the components of performance management. Now, the first component is performance planning. Performance planning. So we know very well it is very crucial component of any performance management process, which forms the basis of performance appraisal. Without proper planning, we cannot appraise or we cannot review properly. So if you miss that particular planning, the entire objective of your performance appraisal is waste. That's the reason you should plan properly, and the performance planning is jointly done by the appraisee and also the reviewee in the beginning of the performance session, so that we have to consider both the side and their perspectives towards their performance, as well as what are their work done, and then what are they offering to the organization. And as a reviewee, you also get the accurate information from those people, so that there is no clash between you and your employee, so that the employee feels that this process is very transparent. And during this period, the employees decide upon the targets and the key performance areas which can be performed over a year within the performance budget, which is finalized after a mutual agreement between the reporting officer and the employee. The performance appraisal and reviewing the appraisal are normally performed twice in a year in an organization in the form of mid reviews and annual reviews, in which the end of the financial year. In this process, the appraisee first offers the self-filled up ratings in the self-appraisal form, as we earlier mentioned, and also describes his or her achievements for a period of time in quantifiable terms. After the self-appraisal, the final ratings are provided by the appraiser for the quantifying and the measurable achievements of the employees being appraised. For example, if you take an employee, he actually done a job of 100 units, and the supervisor, they miss one particular 1 day's report that 11 units production are the output by the same employee, so that the supervisor has given the information to the next level hierarchy, to that the employee has given the output of 89 only, but the actual output is 100. That was actually identified in this particular process, so that we need to interact with your employee before checking or describing his work. So that's the reason we the companies or the industry introduce self-appraisal form, so that we can monitor and control the actuals with the data given by the manager or supervisor. In previous times, the supervisors, they have to change, and they want to get a undue credit of this type of performance appraisals. But whereas the new introduce or new initiatives, which is not possible, so every employee, they have to give their self-performance appraisal, and then it will tally with every day of the work, so that after the self-appraisal, the final ratings are provided by the appraiser for the quantifying and the measurable achievements. Right. The entire process of review seeks an active participation of both the employee and appraiser for getting the, it means that there is no chance of loopholes in performance and how come, and they want to check how it can be overcome. So this has been discussed in the performance feedback system. So that in performance feedback system, the employees, they may raise the important questions or their work related information, and the new initiatives taken within the group or else by their team leader. So everything they can give in this particular feedback section. So that based on this feedback system, they have to prepare or plan for the next performance appraisal process. That is a crucial stage in this particular reviewing. The reviews always gives us a good decision making. That was also very important aspect where we discuss with our employees, right? And the third component is the feedback on the performance, followed by the personal counseling and the performance facilitation. So feedback and counseling is given a lot of importance in the performance management process. This is the stage in which the employee acquires awareness from the appraiser about the areas of improvements, and also they informed on whether the employees contributed the expected level or not. So here the performance has a very key, and the employee receives an open and a very transparent feedback along with its the training and development needs of the employee is also identified in feedback mechanism. So this facilitation is very important for the employee to get the training needs. Today, the companies are giving priority for training needs because if employee is skilled, automatically the performance has increased. For example, if you take IBM or Infosys, they continuously identify the needs of the employees and then they arrange such kind of training programs and they may conduct workshops, seminars, oh, sometimes it may be online. So everything is possible with the performance appraisal. So if you have identified that need as a manager or else as a company CEO or MD, you just arrange such kind of facilities to your employees so that you can get a possible results. The appraiser adopts all the possible steps to ensure that the employee meets the expected outcomes for an organization through effective personal counseling and guidance. So mentoring and representing the employee in the training programs which develop the competencies and it may improve the overall productivity also. That's the reason we have to give uh, priority for feedback on the performance and which followed by the personal counseling and the performance presentation. Here the counselors also has a great role that they have to counsel the low productive employees to make them as a good product employees. So if the productivity has increased so that it may be beneficial as usual. So, and the fourth component is rewarding good performance. What is rewarding good performance? As every time a reward is a measure of performance. So such we have such kind of people that they motivated towards the rewards offered by organization. And then if the reward announced on behalf of a particular employee so that other employees may motivated, it may be a possible one. So that we have to consider the reward mechanism in organization. This is a very vital component as it will determine the work motivation of an employee. During this stage, an employee is publicly recognized for good performance and is rewarded. So public recognition always gives us a good motivation and then we feel very proud in the society also. That's the reason the employee always works best and they also expect the recognition from your organization. So management has to consider it and they reward them. This stage is very sensitive for an employee as this may have a direct influence on the self-esteem and achievement orientation. Even a small employee also, they may get a benefited of this particular reward. It may be financial reward or non-financial reward, whatever it may be. For example, if you take Sundar Pichai, who is the present CEO of Google and in his previous history, he is very motivated with the rewards given by the Google. At that first time, he achieved one reward and he expressed his emotional things with the organization. He is well connected with the organization because he is achieving something and then is getting some rewards from the Google company. So it may be a motivated one. So these such kind of reward are rewarding the employees may become the employees as loyal. So any contributions duly recognized by an organization, it definitely helps an employee in coping up with the failure successfully and satisfy the needs for affection. So that these rewards has created the affection between you and your company. It may be a possible one so that every organization, they give a preference for reward. So next component is a performance improvement plan. Performance improvement plan. In performance improvement plan, the fresh set of goals are established for an employee and they give a new deadline is provided for accomplishing those objectives. The employee is clearly communicated about the areas in which the employee is expected to improve and a stipulated deadline is also assigned within which the employee must show this improvement. This plan is jointly developed by the appraisee and the appraiser and is mutually approved because every performance improvement plan is required whether we can achieve or not. if we can achieve, so that we can easily get the performance from your employees. Without knowing the employees opinion towards new changes in performance improvement plan, it may be a difficult to reach, because every object, every goal should be achievable, so that we can confirm before fixing the performance standard or new performance improvement plan, so that it will be beneficial to both the appraisee and appraiser. And the next component is a potential appraisal. So potential appraisal is form or forms a basis for both the lateral and vertical movement of employees. We know very well the potential appraiser always gives us a good mapping your skills with organizational requirements. So by implementing the competency mapping and various assessment techniques, potential appraisal is performed. So potential appraisal performs crucial inputs for the succession planning and job rotation. So it may be a good one and a good sign for your organizational performance. And we have all the components, and now the session is open for discussion. So if you have any queries,